Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delilah Lugo.
I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
Um, Reap the Spoils, it's a monthly spoiler cast. We play a game, we come here, we talk about it, we spoil it. If you haven't played the game that we're talking about, it's the title of the episode, but we'll also say it in a few seconds. If you haven't played the game that we're talking about, pause the episode, go play the game, then come back and listen. Unless you really just want us to ruin the whole thing for you.
Yeah, it's 3 hours long. It's not too much work.
This thing in particular, it's like, what are we playing? Delilah, what are we playing, or what are we talking about?
The Resident Evil Village Shadows of Rose DLC.
What I thought we were talking
Yeah,
about a Plague Tale Requiem.
it turns out it's a PS5 only game.
It turns
Yeah.
out I'm an asshole. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So yeah, quick housekeeping notes. Last episode, it was our episode on the Resident Evil remake that came out in 2002 for the Nintendo GameCube and has an HD remaster available on like everything modern. So go play it. We said we were going to be talking about a Plague Tale Requiem. None of us, somehow, all three of us follow the games industry, all three of us follow video games really closely, and somehow none of us realized that a Plague Tale Requiem is a current gen only game, and Jason does not have a current gen video game console yet, because there just hasn't been an exclusive game for either of those consoles to convince him to buy one. Plus, there were supply constraints, and it was also kind of difficult. Yeah, I mean, like the first line wasn't wrong. I mean, I know what you're waiting for, and I don't blame you for that.
It's not so much I'm waiting for it as that's my deadline. Like I have to have it by then.
That's fair. That's fair. That game, just in case anyone's curious, is Final Fantasy 16.
Of course, anyway, it's a Final Fantasy game.
Of course it is. if I wasn't inclined to buy a PS5 at launch, that's probably the game that would get me to buy a PS5 too. So it's not really a surprise that Jason and I are both huge Final Fantasy nuts that are just so excited. But anyway, point is, we couldn't do an episode on a Plague Tale Requiem. I mean, we could have, but you would have been missing Jason, and that just would have been too disappointing.
Nobody would have missed me.
No, that's not true. We would have missed you. We would have missed you. But anyway,
I'm going off the comments here.
There's Jason stands for sure.
Yeah, there are for one. A fact. I know there's a few. There's a few Jason stands out there.
Hey, I'm not pitying myself. I take pride in being the resident asshole. It's my job.
No, it's Resident Evil, not Resident Asshole.
Ooh, good
Come on,
segue.
Jason.
Good segue.
Get it together. Yeah, it all kind of worked out because there was a new Resident Evil Village DLC that just came out called Shadows of Rose as part of the Winter's expansion that they put out. So with new narrative content, we felt it was worthwhile to come back and talk about it for you guys, the listeners.
Yes.
So that being said, this is a DLC for Resident Evil Village that takes place after Resident Evil Village. If you've not played Resident Evil Village yet, go play Resident Evil Village. Listen to our episode on Resident Evil Village. That's right. We did an episode on it last year when the game came out. Okay. It's very good. It's worth a listen. I guarantee it. And then play Shadows of Rose that came with the Winter's expansion that just released for Resident Evil Village, and then come back and listen to this episode on that DLC. Is that like too complicated? Did I sum it up pretty okay? Okay, cool. All right. How much was the Winter's expansion? I don't even remember.
It was like $20 or $30.
$20? Okay. Something like that. All right. There's also the Resident Evil Village Gold Edition that just came out. That's a $60 package that has the game with the Winter's expansion.
Yeah, be careful with that. And there's even a note in the PlayStation Store for anybody listening. You can accidentally buy the gold one if you already have RE8, which you shouldn't do.
Yeah. I mean that heavily comes down to how PlayStation Store listings are kind of structured. It's kind of messy.
Yeah, but thankfully Sony put a note in bold in the store.
Yeah. I mean, they feel like they should just make the gold edition unavailable for purchase if you own like the digital version of Village. But that's besides the point. Are we ready for a history lesson on Resident Evil Village Shadows of Rose?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It's a brief one. It's super brief. Resident Evil Village released May 7th, 2021. Again, we did an episode on it. Go check it out. It's a great episode. I recorded it myself with you with these two guys. The DLC for Resident Evil Village was announced a month later at E3 2021. When E3 was I don't know, not stuck in weird limbo. I don't even know what to call it anymore.
When it wasn't like a year-round thing of shows every other month.
Yeah, it's weird. E3 2021 like stands alone as like its own thing that just like kind of happened because it didn't happen. E3 didn't happen this year and it didn't happen the year before, so it's like it's kind of on its own little weird event island. But yeah, it was revealed that DLC was being developed for Resident Evil Village at E3, so in June. That was basically all we got at the time. We didn't know what the DLC was going to consist of, what it was going to be, what it would include. They just said, "Hey, this game has been stupidly successful for us. We would be fools not to add a little more monetization for it." So we went like pretty much a whole year in the dark about that until the DLC was revealed at the Capcom Showcase in June 2022. That's right. Even though we didn't get an E3, we got a slew of events, and one of those was a Capcom Showcase full of exoprimals and whatever the hell else, Street Fighters, you name it, they had it. Monster Hunters. Anyway, they revealed what this DLC would be, and it was the Winter's expansion that would include first of all, a third-person perspective mode for the game, the main game.
Where you still can't see Ethan's face anyway. So
I want to talk about that with when we talk about this DLC. So a third-person mode, 2 new maps, and 3 new characters in the Mercenaries mode, and they rebranded the Mercenaries mode Additional Orders. And then the big beefy chunk of content, Shadows of Rose, this narrative story that we're going to talk about today. Winter's expansion / the gold edition of Resident Evil Village, which bundles in Winter's expansion with the game, released on October 28th, like literally last week.
Yeah, good timing for an expansion like this.
Yeah, really. So that's all we really got with a history lesson on this. It's a brief one, but it's that's the timeline. It's a pretty short timeline, you know.
Yeah,
we got this a little over a year after the game came out.
Yeah, when they revealed that it was going to be following Rose, I was kind of surprised because I thought that was going to be like Resident Evil 9 or something.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I definitely want to talk about. So before we jump into the game or to the DLC, final warning, we're going to spoil the whole damn thing. So if you haven't played Resident Evil Village or Resident Evil Village Shadows of Rose, please pause, go play those things, and come back to us. Or if you just want us to spoil everything, well, I can't control your life. You do. You make your own decisions.
Mm.
And that's just the way of it. So anyway, are we ready?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm not sure we needed this.
Nope.
No.
That's kind of what I want to open up with.
You want to know the irony of it?
I
actually probably like this story better than the actual Resident Evil 8 story.
Well, let's I don't know. I'm really conflicted because there's a lot of things that this did that I really enjoyed, and there's a lot of things that this did where I was just like, why are you telling this I don't even know. It's almost like a coming of age story about a girl that was bullied growing up, but like I don't know, it almost reads like bad fan fiction.
Well, it's the simplicity of it is probably why I like it, because it and the way it's executed in combination with the gameplay segments you're going through, the character story in some ways actually enhances some sections to a significant degree. Like, I understand what you're saying about the fan fiction, but the simplicity of it versus the convoluted nature of the main game story, like, I don't know.
I mean, let me give this explanation out front, and you tell me if this doesn't sound like bad fan fiction. Okay, this story is about a girl who grew up bullied and looked down upon because she sweated fungal juices out of her skin and desperately wants to get rid of that. So some guy who I had to look up who the hell he was tells her, "Hey, by the way,
Yeah.
if you connect with this thing that we literally blew up at the end of Resident Evil Village, you can lose your powers." And it turns out it's just one final ploy of the villain of that game to do the thing that she was trying to do in that game. It just kind of rehashes that whole thing.
Yeah,
But like,
I'm glad you brought that up, because when the game or the DLC starts, I was like, who is he?
I actually just assumed he was one of the people that like she was in the van with. I was like, oh, maybe it's just a guy that like, you know, one of Chris Redfield's people or whatever
Yeah,
that he
and
sent
that's
to like protect her.
And that's exactly who he was. He was one of the members of the Wolfhound Squad, or
yeah, he says
Hound
I'm
Wolf
K.
Squad.
He says I'm K, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Men in Black? Like,
Yeah.
like he's gonna pull out a fucking neuralizer, and she just forgets that she has
Well,
super. Like, what is going on?
What I found strange and weird was that K is short for not even short for, it's I'm trying to find, I had this open in a tab. K is short for canine, so and spelled like canine, like CANINE. Who
Okay.
again was one of the members of Chris's Hound Wolf Squad. So he was one of the guys in the squad where at the end of Village, like you're raiding the village and going to destroy the Megamycete.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys, but like we didn't really get much interaction with those fellas.
Yeah.
And K, the letter K, really is just him shortening that his name, that he, his code name is K9. I
So
don't
it's
know.
a code name for a code name.
Yeah, basically, I guess you could say that.
And I
But,
guess, and I guess it fits in very well with the modern interpretation of Chris Redfield and his they're just dude bro soldiers. So it's like, my name is K9, but it's with a K, so it's cool.
No, it's not. It's not even spelled with a K. It's like, it's kind of like like a K9 unit dog. How it's just how it's letter K9, but like
gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
but like my point being, we're burying the lead here. The point being is I had no idea who the fuck this guy was, and he's kind of the guy that sets her on this path in the first place in this DLC. So I was just very lost right from the get go as to who the hell is this guy, and why is he why does he like have access to some lab where there's a piece of the Megamycete that still remains like here, like I immediately lots of red flags and questions come up. And later you find out that it was just a hallucination created by Miranda. We know that the Mutamycete is able to do that. It's kind of a hive mind, and a lot of Resident Evil 7's plot was contingent on hallucinations and seeing things that weren't actually there. So like we know that that's an ability of the Muta and Megamycete.
It's magic.
Yeah, well, okay, sure. It's magic. It's about as magical as like anything else in Resident Evil. It's like it's trying to root itself in science but this time it's like really trying to have the appearance.
They're not even trying really trying anymore. It's just like, it's magic. Just go with it. It's fungus.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, the only thing that I can see that this DLC in its plot like set out to accomplish was to, when we find out at the very end, they replay the final cutscene of Village where Rose is 16 and she goes to Ethan's grave, puts flowers down there, and then gets taken away. And we'll circle back to her being going off down the street in that van.
Mm-hmm.
We'll circle back to that, but I want to focus on the fact that like I neglected to re-listen to our episode, so I don't know if we brought this up in the episode for Village, but I did find it a little odd that Rose would have any attachment to Ethan, given she was just a toddler, an infant when he died. I found it odd that she would go visit his grave and feel as attached to him as she seemingly did in that cutscene, and this kind of helps to explain that in a way.
Yeah.
Because she like became somewhat close to him within the collective subconscious or whatever.
I was gonna say what this DLC also did, because I agree it was really not necessary, but I guess that's a good thing because if like people miss out on the DLC, they're not missing on anything super like moving the story forward.
Yeah.
It did like kind of put more emotional impact to notes that we read about like Miranda and Eveline and like also just kind of Rose's curiosity about Ethan. Like now we actually saw what their relationship like could have been in the way that you were
Yeah.
saying. um so it just like gave us visuals for notes that we've read because we read about Miranda's goal and now we're actually seeing it in fruition,
Or
all over again.
a desperate attempt
A
to
desperate
bring it
attempt,
to the end.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I have a
Um,
hypothesis which I shared a bit before the recording with you, Mark, but I guess we'll probably get into it later. But
okay.
I do have a hypothesis about how this DLC came to be.
Hmm. Another thing I do kind of want to bring up is like everyone's dead. They're just in this collective subconscious of the Megamycete. So Miranda, even if Miranda was able to resurrect uh Ava as or within the body of Rose, Ava being her daughter, that was the whole goal of her whole goal in Resident Evil Village was to kidnap Rose and perform a ritual to resurrect Ava within Rose's body. Um, Even if she could manage to do that here in this situation, in this narrative that we have, Ava could get out because Rose has a body. Miranda would still be stuck in the subconscious.
Yeah,
She's dead. She's not coming back.
right.
It's
So
magic.
what?
Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I think it
that's
was more so just like an oversight from a writing perspective. Um,
Yeah, no, it is definitely bad writing, and you're right to point it out.
it's either that or like even just a throwaway line like even if I can't come back, you can live on or something. Something like that to just show how desperate she was to get Ava to live, and even if it meant she couldn't be with her, that would have dispelled the issue. But it
unless
You
just
could
of
also,
course somehow she thought she could like take over Mia's body or something. I don't know.
yeah,
Also,
who
like
knows.
then that'll be the story. Like, oh, we just take over bodies because we can because
Watch
yeah,
magic.
watch we get another DLC where we
but
play as Mia and we play out exactly what you just described.
to be fair, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but you could make an argument that the plot that happens within the mycete,
Mega
Megamycete.
Mycete.
megamycetes, um, is not really all that important outside of the character development. And
Uh-huh.
you could make a comparison to, say, Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland, where all of that
Mm.
stuff is ultimately inconsequential. It's more the character development when they come back to the real world, and that none of that may have really happened or was happening inside of Rose's head. We honestly don't know because the story doesn't really make it clear.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about Michael. Were any of
The
you
Archangel Michael.
were either of you surprised that this was
Not
Ethan?
really.
No,
I had a
no,
feeling the whole time. I was
I
like, who else
called
would it be?
I called it immediately. I mean, like
yeah.
it was obvious, right? It was obvious, but I was more so just sitting there, like when he called himself Michael, I was like, why? Why bother hiding this?
Honestly, at first I thought it would have. At first, I thought it was someone using her like a Miranda or someone. I didn't
Mm,
like say, oh, it's Miranda, but I was like, oh, maybe this person's like luring her somewhere.
like
And someone was, but in a different way. They lured her there in the first place to get
yeah.
her powers taken away.
You thought
Um,
you were thinking they were like an Atlas type person,
right.
calling back to
Exactly.
Bioshock.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Spoilers for Bioshock. um, yeah, but then when they started getting a little more tender with the writing on the walls, because that's how we interacted with it, was just like writing on the wall. That's
Mhm.
when I was like, oh, okay, wait, no, I think this is Ethan or someone like close to her. Which, who else would it be?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I immediately sprung to as soon as the words started appearing, talking to her, and I'm like, okay, this is Ethan. And then he calls himself Michael, and I'm like, okay,
Well, it's
Yeah.
because
sure.
it's because right before that she says, "What are you, an angel or something?" And he says, "Yes." And then my name is Michael. Michael's the Archangel, and
Well, she asked
in
him,
the
"What are you,
Bible.
a
Yeah,
guardian angel
yeah,
specifically?" It was a guardian
yeah,
angel, which, like, yeah, of course, Ethan would be her guardian angel, but like,
yeah.
why hide that? Like, I feel like they could have had more opportunity to bond
Well,
if
he
he
was
had
trying
just
to get. To be fair, he was trying to get her to leave as soon as she
this is
got there.
yeah, I guess that's a good point. That's a good point. It would definitely be harder to convince her to just go if he expressly admits, "Hey, I'm your dad. You've never met me, but
Yeah,
you need to go right now."
Yeah,
and the DLC acknowledges it because she asked him, "Why didn't you just tell me?" And he said, "I didn't want to complicate things," because then she probably would have asked a bunch of questions instead of
Still,
like leaving or whatever.
I still was just like it's sad when like that's supposed to be a big twist that I called as soon as words started
Yeah,
appearing up before her, and I'm like, oh, this is Ethan for sure, 100%.
yeah.
This
There's
is a
definitely a lot
consciousness
of
where anyone that died nearby gets entered into. Yeah, this is Ethan talking to
there's
her.
yeah, and again, to be fair, there's definitely not just that. A lot of dramatic irony in general going on in this story, just
Hmm.
because she has no idea how or why Ethan died. Apparently, I don't know why they wouldn't tell her,
I don't know.
yeah,
but we do obviously because we played Resident Evil 8.
Yeah, right. I do kind of want to. I do kind of want to circle back to like Rose's upbringing. I do find it kind of odd that with who she is and what we've seen happen with young kids in the Resident Evil series in the past, I find it odd that she was just like, I guess, enrolled in public school and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
You would think they would have put her in like a special school or
I mean,
whatever.
I think in Resident Evil like lore, I think Sherry was kind of apprehended by the government and kind of raised in government facilities and stuff like that after 2. So it's really weird to me that like Rose. Well, there's also the problem that Chris has gone rogue and I guess technically is no longer part of the government. So maybe that's kind of the contrivance they have for her getting to try and lead a normal life.
I mean, at the end of the day, like she went to public school because plot needed it to be like that, so she had all these shadows to confront in our mind
Yeah.
as a
Yeah,
character.
I want to think that they wanted her to have a normal life, but I feel like there would have been like extra forces that would have forced her not to. I feel
Hmm.
like there's more like if you know someone has these powers, like you're gonna do whatever it takes to like not have that get out there.
Yeah. And I guess to be fair and to be clear, we don't know for a fact that she went to public school. Like it still could have been a private school and she still would have been bullied for again sweating fungal juices. Um I know it's really gross, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's basically true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um she still could have been bullied in any capacity, I guess. It's just it doesn't seem like she was particularly raised as protected as characters who normally fall into these situations are historically in the series, like I bring up Sherry for a reason.
yeah,
um and like even Sherry to an extent was somewhat experimented on.
yeah.
So I just find it a little odd that she went through all that, and
And
that's kind of the basis for her character.
it's also like just from a story's perspective, how many times have we heard like a person that is different or with some kind of powers is being bullied and they want to like take that away? Like it's just such a like
it's
stock
a trope.
story.
Yeah,
It's a
It, it
trope, right?
it is pretty cliche. It is very tropey, and that's I feel like that's another reason why I feel like it's just bad. It feels like bad fan fiction.
Yeah.
It's very and it's very weird coming from Resident Evil. It's even though I think this game does a lot of really cool things to mix up the Resident Evil formula, or sorry, this DLC does a lot of cool things to mix up the Resident Evil formula. It's just narratively, it's still just so strange
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
to
tropes.
take this angle.
It should be said though that tropes aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's the execution of them.
Yeah,
Like, um, and in this case, I didn't enjoy the story so much for the story itself or its execution, and like we just pointed out a bunch of problems right here within a few minutes at the beginning of this podcast. I more enjoyed it for how it played into the gameplay.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, like we can sidetrack and talk about. Frankly, I want to talk about my favorite level, the doll, revisiting the dollhouse.
The Beneviento house is like the
Yeah,
Yeah,
strongest point of
yeah,
Resident Evil 8 period.
and it was definitely the strongest point in the base game, and I almost feel like it's made a little stronger here, at least before you're made tiny and have to avoid the you have to Metal Gear your way through the fucking dolls and stuff.
Yeah, if I had to like pinpoint the strongest moments in Resident Evil 8 period, including DLC, it would be the baby and the mannequin section. Those two
Hmm.
sections are just like amazing.
But even what Jason just said with conveying the story through the gameplay, that whole puzzle sequence where you have to get the dolls and put them in the dioramas, so you kind of see these horrible bullying events that happened in Rose's life, like that was really clever.
Yeah.
really
And
cool exposition. Yeah,
it was really really fucking cool, and it was made even creepier on the last one where the fourth doll that you get is Evelyn.
yeah,
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about momentarily, but man, that's like it's like both foreshadowing what's to come, but also it's just like haunting thinking that Evelyn's been like in the consciousness of the Megamycete watching Rose be bullied all her life and like getting off on it,
Yeah.
like enjoying watching it. It's very effective and very creepy. And then that's immediately followed by like what's probably one of the scariest fucking things to happen in Resident Evil, and that's those goddamn mannequins.
Yeah.
yeah. That was I loved the design of that. The and
Holy
the encounter in
shit.
general. Yeah,
I didn't think they could outdo the baby, but they definitely did with that.
I do
Especially
think the baby was scarier personally, but
okay.
this was definitely creepy, especially because like I didn't know they were gonna throw more mannequins at you. I didn't expect that. I thought it was
Yeah.
just gonna be the one. And the minute one showed up behind me, I was like, oh shit, really?
I think the reason this is more effective for me is because like the baby was like super. It was super over the top, right? It was
hmm
extremely gory and gross and massive, and it was just like, you know, it was just them sitting there like, what's like the scariest thing we can come up with? Like
yeah,
Yeah.
just bar none scariest thing, a giant mutated crying awful gory fucking baby. Okay. And then they come through here is like, what if we just have a mannequin with glowing eyes play fucking red light green light with you the whole time, and like once you turn a corner you just hear it start moving again and come through a door and then just look at you and stop moving. Like I
yeah.
don't it's a much more subtle it's a much more subtle scare, but it's so effective. And then yeah, go
It's also
when you
built up
leave,
very
just
well.
think
Yeah,
yeah, and then when you go to leave and you just think, oh, there's just the one, you hear another one from coming down the hallway from the other end, and
right.
Yeah.
then you turn another corner and there's another one.
Yeah,
Just
it's built up well as you're doing the doll puzzles beforehand. Like
Hmm.
the environment will
mm,
change around you, and it pops up in front of you when you open a door. But
yeah.
that's before it starts moving. So they build up the tension slowly in that sequence, and then not only are the mannequins scary in and of themselves, but the gameplay mechanics tied to them are actually really cool and create cool puzzles
Mm-hmm.
on their own. Like without manipulating the environment, you have to utilize the nature of the dolls and how they interact with you to maneuver through them. It's just very well done overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like with placing the dolls in the dioramas, like you have to take note because like eventually you find the tape, it's all scratched out, you don't know where to place the ones, but there's items there, and you have to analyze the dolls and figure out how they would match up with the items that are presented to you. I really, it's not a hard puzzle, but it's definitely really cool.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Definitely the strongest section.
yeah, and then followed by Metal Gearing through bladed dolls that are trying to kill you, which Delilah, I know you and I both were talking about how frustrated we kind of got with that section.
Yeah, it was just like they were everywhere, so it was really hard to avoid them. Um, and and then you had to like start over from the beginning in each section. It wasn't
Yeah.
like too bad of a checkpoint, but it was annoying enough for me to be like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done.
It's funny you guys say that because I actually only got detected once the entire time. I never died in that section.
Oh, you're a
Um,
pro.
but no, no, no. I'm not. not judging. I'm just saying it's funny that you guys had that complaint. My complaint was actually navigating with the map when you get shrunk down. Became, especially at the very end of it, when there are multiple giant mannequins doing patrols.
Yeah.
And because the environments when you're shrunk, especially when you're shrunk down like that, look very similar, I was actually doing circles around the entire map trying to find, because you're trying to get to, I think, the bedroom it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I kept somehow maneuvering back to the beginning, and I was confused. I kept looking at the map, and the map doesn't say bedroom anywhere. It says like kitchen. So I'm going through these same environments over and over, just trying to find my way out.
See,
That was my point of frustration.
I'm surprised you used the map at all because I
Yeah, I
felt like
didn't.
the layout. Yeah,
Maybe
I
I
like.
shouldn't have died then.
Well, I only used the map because I realized that I somehow ended up at the beginning of the section after going through that second mannequin
Well,
patrol.
I guess what I'm saying is I felt that the layout of that level of that area was linear enough that I never felt that I was lost.
Hmm.
It kind of guides you along the path that you need to go pretty well. So I never felt like I wasn't sure where to go. I was more so, at least not in terms of the room structure. I got lost in where to go just because the movement patterns of some of the dolls and some of the singular rooms, um it was kind of tricky finding cover that worked and also progressed me forward at times.
Hmm.
I'm thinking of the one where there's one of the things in the center, and they're all patrolling in a circle, and you kind of have to work your way around. I got caught there more times than I'm willing to admit, just because I couldn't get the patterning down and find appropriate and
Yo,
well
just get
placed
good, man.
cover. Okay, I'll try that next time. Um, we're kind of jumping we're jumping around a little bit, but I feel like narratively speaking the dollhouse was important to talk about because it's what provides us pretty much the entirety of Rose's backstory.
Yeah.
Plus it's just such a cool fucking level. I do want to double back and talk about the villains,
Mm.
starting with the Duke in the castle. This was definitely strange, and I, the explanation for this was just that he bringing him back to life was an experiment of Miranda's just to make sure she knew what she was doing, and like
Yeah.
she wound up completely changing who he was as a person. So that's why the Duke is antagonistic here. Is she brought him back to life,
How dare she?
and he yeah, right,
I love the Duke.
yeah, and in here he's just like a big creep that talks about rabbits a whole lot.
Yeah, and he can't even fit his clothes anymore.
He couldn't before, right?
I
Like,
feel like it was his stomach was protruding out a little more. Like some of the buttons were broken, whereas
you think
before, like
maybe that's lending to the villainistic approach they're taking with him this
yeah,
time. They're trying to make him more disheveled.
it was like, oh, Dookie, you let yourself go
Yeah,
even more.
Again, I didn't really mind that too much. I thought it was really cool, the whole subplot that she was making Rose clones
yeah.
to
Yeah, that was
try to
cool.
create a vessel. It's also very on the nose, like for any like psych majors or people who work in psychology. Very Jungian. It's the whole thing. A lot of symbology of confronting the inner shadow and controlling it to use it for good in the real world. Like that's pretty much what all of this shit is a metaphor for.
I think you mean the inner shadows of Rose.
Or shadows, yes, exactly. The title itself is like a metaphor for that psychological concept.
Man, it's got to be freaky, like going into like a collective subconscious like that, and just like just entering into it and just finding copies and pictures of yourself everywhere. And it's
Hmm.
like, why the fuck are you all so obsessed with me? What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Right.
Did you guys predict that it was a Miranda though? Like based on all that?
I didn't even
No.
remember who Miranda was. I'll be completely honest. When it was like Miranda at the end, I like was thinking like I don't know why the first thought that popped into my head was the movie Serenity. For those of you Firefly fans, because Miranda is the code word that sets off. Um, oh my god, having who's the sister?
It's
Oh,
okay. Don't worry about it.
whatever. Doesn't matter.
Neither of us. I,
The
I
point
don't know
is I
anything
was
about Firefly, so
the point is I was thinking of Firefly. I didn't even realize I had completely forgotten that Miranda was the main villain of 8, which shows how little that game stuck with me.
I mean, the thing is, like, no, I didn't expect it, but was I surprised and or did I care? No, not
Right.
really.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't too much of a shock that it was Miranda.
Yeah.
I was more so, if anything, disappointed. Like, I thought we didn't really face off against the Duke, right? Like, we fight off the big guy with the big club that he manifested to attack us.
Right.
That's who we kill at the end of the Duke section.
Yeah, we
So I
fight them
really
through like proxies. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought the real final big bad was either going to be the Duke, or eventually I thought it was going to be Evelyn, because there was some build up claiming that Evelyn was behind a lot of what was going on.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Evelyn. Yeah, she has been kind of watching Rose from the shadows her whole life, and kind of she's jealous and she hates her
Yeah.
because she gets to live a normal life and have a family, and Evelyn didn't really get to have that. Go listen to our Resident Evil 7 spoiler cast to hear more about Evelyn and her shenanigans.
Well, like, I mean, Rose lost her dad, Evelyn. Relax, okay? It's not all
Yeah.
peaches and rainbows for her.
Right, like she's not living the most normal life. It's kind of silly that Evelyn is as jealous as she is, but like I also get it, and I
She
thought
had
that.
that relationship with Mia, so that's probably what it was. Like, she wanted
Yeah, and I thought that would have been a good. I thought that was actually a really good setup to have Evelyn be the villain one last time.
Mhm.
I never would have expected it, because I thought Evelyn's whole arc was kind of
yeah.
closed.
She turns into like an old woman at the end of the game, doesn't she?
Well, yeah, but also she's the one that kind of reveals to Ethan in Village, like, hey,
Yeah,
you're a mold man, by the way. You died in 7.
yeah.
Like, you never lived after
Mhm.
Jack,
Mold man.
brought you into the house. Yeah. After Jack welcomed you to the family. Um so I thought she was kind of done. So I was definitely surprised to see her again, but it
Yeah,
wasn't
it was
like
it was
a.
cool to see her for
Mhm.
sure. And do you guys remember where Mia is throughout this whole thing? Because I'm like, where the hell
I
is she?
mean, I'm assuming Mia's just home. Like, she escapes Village with Rose. So I assume she's just kind of like. I mean, who knows? Maybe she's at work during the events of this DLC, or just
Want to hear
sitting at
something
home watching
funny?
TV. What?
The fact that you guys just said that, I completely forgot that Mia was alive. I thought she was still dead from the beginning of
No,
Resident Evil 8. Yeah.
no, that wasn't her. That was Miranda.
Yeah, yeah, no, no,
Remember,
I know.
Yeah,
I know. That's why I'm telling you, and it's funny because that's how little staying power that game had with me, that I don't
right,
even
right.
remember those core plot twists.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I gotcha. But anyway, yeah, it was cool to see Evelyn back, and I really thought that the setup was going to be made for her to be the main villain. After she became present, I no longer cared or thought about the Duke being the main villain. I thought, oh, okay, Evelyn's behind all this, and then no, it's just Miranda. It's just Miranda again doing the same exact thing she was trying to do in the main game.
And once again, and this doubles back to the point we made, like, why couldn't Miranda and Evelyn just chill in the Megamycete collective consciousness and have like their mother-daughter relationship there and just
Hey,
move on? You know, like, they're both there,
Or
literally.
even more to the point, what if she can exist, I guess, ostensibly forever within the Megamycete? Why not just have Evie come back in the
or
Megamycete and live happily ever after in the Megamycete?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, she technically is there, but
Yeah.
Delilah brings up a great point. Like, Miranda has a void to fill in that she lost her daughter. Evelyn has a void to fill in that she desperately wants a family. Why wouldn't they have teamed up at the very least?
Again, this
Yeah.
is this is why I choose. Again, this is not made explicit by the game. I choose to interpret it as an Alice in Wonderland type story, where like
Okay.
all these characters are just representing reflections of the problem that Rose has, which is
Right.
she hates herself, and she probably subconsciously resents the fact that she doesn't have parents, but
Hmm.
also doesn't she doesn't know why for some reason,
Yeah.
even though she's a special forces lady. They don't bother to tell her what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing I would definitely want to bring up, as long as we're talking about narrative, is the moments between Rose and Ethan would have been so more effective if they weren't undercut by this weird incessant need,
The man with
the
no face.
that yeah, and this weird need that Capcom, that the narrative designers have with keeping Ethan's face hidden.
Want to know my theory? Capcom wanted to save money by not having to do a facial model for Ethan.
There's a model of him. We've
I know,
seen
I know,
his
I know.
like there is an official, like there an official rendered model of Ethan with his face shown, like, and frankly we see the majority of it anyway. Like if you play in third person mode, if you try to move the camera around to see his face, you see a good bit of it before he turns away.
Yeah.
That
Like
would be funny if like that actually played a role. Like they didn't want to have to hire another motion capture actor to do the face.
it's just some stupid meta thing where they're like, oh, this is the Winters era. The Ethan Winters era is the era of first person mode, so you never see his face anyway. So we're not going to give him one, and you're going to like it,
Hey, it's
even
but
when this game is no longer in first person.
hey man,
Listen.
the man with no face is a better moniker than Mold Man.
Well, too bad. He's a mold man first, as far as I'm concerned.
I never cared to see Ethan's face, you know what I mean? And now they have this third person mode. I'm like, okay, they're doing it for people that are too scared for first person, and that's it. And like, I don't know.
Well, okay.
I could do without it, to be
I'll,
honest.
I'll say that I was very skeptical of why third person mode was so important until they actually brought up that like some people get motion sick when playing in first person mode, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's a fair reason to create this mode. I can understand and agree with that.
Mhm.
But back to my point, like I don't need to see Ethan's face. I just think it's so stupid that like every shot during, especially in this, where like in Village, we only really see him in a cutscene once, and that's at the very end when he's like sacrificing himself. Like we see him in full during that cutscene.
Mm-hmm.
This is like we see him a ton because we're looking at him from Rose's perspective, and they just every single shot they find
He's like cut
some
his head off.
yeah
Right
like,
there at the camera.
my god, they like his arm is just all the way up here covering his face for some reason, and I'm like, guys, just make a face for him, just show it to us. You
If
already have one, we know it exists, it doesn't matter.
if I was being super generous, and I don't actually think they thought this hard about it, but if I was being super generous, I could argue that maybe the point was seeing his face. Like Rose does not know what he looks like, so it's kind of a thematic through line that like when she does see him in that world, she doesn't know what he looks like, so she can't imagine what he look. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
like
But then it
all
doesn't apply to all the other characters, so it's all messy.
it's just so goofy
Again,
that
that's
they
being
like
generous if they thought that much about it.
yeah, it's really goofy to me the whole time. They're trying to have this emotional moment, father and daughter like really meeting,
Did
her all
nothing for me.
grown. Yeah, well, it did nothing for me because like I was just so busy watching like, oh, what clever stupid thing are they gonna use to cover his face this time? Like they just kept doing it, and it was almost comical to me. It was
Let me
just
ask you. Let me ask you. What would you think would have been worse? What we got, or if we did see Ethan's face, but it was covered by like a handkerchief or like a bandana or something like that the entire time, just as like a fourth wall breaking meta fuck you to people who want to see Ethan's face.
okay. I mean, to be fair, I would probably prefer what we have now. I don't want them to Kakashi fucking
Oh my
Ethan.
god! What if? And this is a crazy Resident Evil theory. What if Ethan is the RE4 merchant?
Oh, he
I
doesn't sound
mean,
as cool.
first of all, that's factually impossible.
I know. I know. I'm just kidding.
But no, I wouldn't like that. I would hate that. Damn it, Jason.
He's
I don't like that one bit. Um yeah, this was a mess. Narratively
yeah,
speaking, it
totally.
was a
Oh
total
yeah.
mess. So she and the whole conceit of her going into this consciousness was to get rid of her powers, and she does briefly until she's like, "Oh my god, they're going to kill my dad that's already dead." I need my powers back. And really, I get it. It was more so she could actually have a moment with him, which I suppose that's reward in and of itself. And so she winds up leaving without achieving the goal that she entered with, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
She had a
but
full Dragon Ball moment, which was pretty cool. Like
yeah,
when she was like powering up with the rest of the crystal.
she summoned
She
all
literally does go
the
super fungal, super saiyan
Yeah.
three or four
fungal.
times.
She goes super fungus.
Super
Super
fungus, yeah.
fungus
She
4.
summons all of Earth's fungal powers to do a super fungal, I don't know, branch, whatever you want
Kamehameha.
to. Yeah,
Although she more absorbs the spirit bomb rather than make it.
it's more
Yeah.
kame fungi. But yeah, enough fungus jokes.
It's
uh,
magic.
yeah. So this DLC ends the same way the base game ended. We get the same cutscene again with Rose going to visit her Ethan's gravestone. And like I said, that now makes a lot more sense now that she's actually gotten to know him somewhat. And then we get the same thing of what's his face coming to get her because Chris has like kind of summoned her or whatever, and the guy snarkily calls her Evelyn, and she gets really pissy about it, and like we
Yeah.
still got no explanation for that joke. It's just a stupid, tasteless joke, I guess.
I guess because like they were trying to turn her into Evelyn, like, use her as the
Well,
body for Evelyn.
I think I don't know that they're trying to do that. I think they're just like making an unfair comparison or he was making an unfair comparison just to get a rise out of her, and
Mm.
he did. But I also do think that, well, maybe we'll save the rest of this for the final question. How about that? Let's talk about the rest of the DLC, and then we'll save the rest of this discussion for the end.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right, let's talk about the castle level. How did you guys? We already talked about the dollhouse, so yeah, let's double back, talk about the castle. How did you guys feel about the bit of exploration we do there?
The only cool thing about it, because otherwise I thought it was pretty like standard and the magic didn't offer anything really interesting to the gameplay, is that I already memorized the castle. So it was kind of cool going back and seeing it with like all these like bulbous things everywhere and having to interact with the castle that way. I felt like I knew where I was going at all times, and that was cool. But otherwise, getting rid of the bulbs and the all that nasty gooky stuff and occasionally freezing enemies to get out of the way didn't really do anything for me.
Yeah, it's almost just there to so that people like Resident Evil fans can have a more traditional Resident Evil experience, and also at the same time, it's like a mini tutorial for the powers that you're going to be using later on.
Yeah.
I agree with both of you. But I do feel a little more strongly about it, I guess, positively. Um it's kind of like a remix of the castle. Like
Hmm.
the pot, like the bulbs or whatever you want to call them. We'll call them bulbs. They kind of block off areas and kind of remix, how you go about tackling the castle, what order you go and do things. Like you wind up going outside, I think pretty really early on compared to when you would have in the base game. Um and go to certain areas out of order, and you're kind of forced that way because there's things blocking your path that you need something in order to get by them. um yeah, we could talk briefly about the powers are really the only main gameplay change. I
Yeah.
kind of expected more from I didn't expect Rose to get any guns. I thought she was going to have a more interesting power set.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
And
she was only going to need her powers.
yeah, that was completely my expectation, was that you were just going to get powers, and that was going to be how you attacked enemies, not that Ethan was just going to magically manifest a handgun for you.
Yeah.
um
Like I was saying, um, I think a lot of that has to do with they wanted for Resident Evil like hardcore fans, they wanted to give at least some semblance of the traditional formula.
Hmm.
and I think the castle accomplishes that, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I needed gun. I expected powers, not guns, and
Yeah.
that would have been a really cool shakeup on top of something we're intimately familiar with, a chunky section of exploring a map and finding keys and solving puzzles to make your way forward. Um,
Again,
I
this all plays into my hypothesis, which I guess we'll save
yeah,
for the final question. Yeah.
we'll talk about that shortly. The only problem I really have with the castle section is it's still I had this complaint about Village when we did our episode on Village. It's still very thinly veiled linearity.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's not like Resident Evil remake or Resident Evil 1 or even 2, where you are just let loose in a map and there's multiple different paths you can take. Ultimately, you're going to go on the same path, but you can tackle it in multiple different ways. This is still very, very linear.
I would say it's even more linear because everything is blocked off.
Yeah, yeah, I would, yeah, because even in Village, when you go into the castle, like things aren't blocked off, but doors are locked. But you don't know the doors are locked until you actually physically go up to the doors.
Yeah.
And you
This
have
is
to
much
solve,
more,
yeah, you have to solve puzzles in the sequential order that they want them solved. Same thing
yeah.
with the doll section. Like you can't. There are like four different. It was like three or four different mini doll puzzles, but you had to do them in a specific order to unlock the
I
specific
mean,
Yeah.
dolls.
you could with the dollhouse, you could look at the doll as just the whole house as this one giant puzzle to solve.
Yeah,
Whereas this castle deliberately wants you to explore, but guides you through it anyway.
yeah,
So it's kind of defeating its own purpose, and that was what Village did. The base game, that's what that game did as well, and it really bothered me then. But Delilah's absolutely right. It's more linear here because it's much more obvious which paths are blocked off and which ones you have to take, or which one you have to take.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that bit was a little disappointing, but it was still nice to. It still kind of played with our expectations a little bit by changing up how you navigate the castle.
right.
Yeah.
Since you played Village, you know the layout of the castle. You kind of have an idea of where you go first in that game, and so this DLC kind of changes that up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a welcome change that I didn't that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, as far as her powers go, with just unlocking those bulbs and removing the things, yeah, the ability to freeze enemies was very underwhelming. And also tying your your ability to use the powers to something where you have to consume a finite, and you only get a
Another
finite
herb.
amount of these. Yeah, you get a finite amount of every item in this, and tying the powers to that finite amount. I mean, I get it. It plays into survival horror
Right.
mechanic of item conservation, but I don't know. I really wish they just
Yeah,
had
it's
powers.
like a weird balance with the powers because like on one hand you don't want her to be so overpowered where you could just like spam the freeze and like get by enemies without any issues. So
Yeah.
like having it limited where you have to use it strategically, it makes it more survival horror. But on the other hand, it's like she has magic. Why the fuck not? You know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, if anything, like I don't want to. I don't like to talk about what the game should have been or what I think the game should have been, but maybe something like next to a save point would be like some. I mean, we're already talking about purifying crystals. Maybe have some sort of recharge crystal that recharges her ability, and she could only recharge there. And there's only a few of those in the map, so when she
Hmm.
leaves the one room, she needs to get to the next crystal to recharge her powers. Otherwise, if she runs out, she might be locked in a deadly situation.
Hmm.
Do something like that instead of just manifest a gun for her.
Yeah, just replace the typewriters. Just have the crystals be the save point, and it
Yeah,
recharges you.
yeah, I guess you
Yeah, there you
could.
go.
I was making a veiled Final Fantasy reference. There's Japanese people; they love their crystals and magic.
That's true. That's true. um I put this in here, but there really isn't much to talk about with it. The final stretch where you're kind of back in the village and you're dealing with like the caves briefly, like they throw like a lot of last ditch enemies at you. Is there anything really to say about this? I
I
almost feel
c-
like it was pretty unnecessary to an extent.
Yeah, it for me was like whatever. I don't know. I feel like she had like more powers at that point. Like I felt like I had more resources to get through it, so
Yeah,
it wasn't as annoying to me. But it didn't feel like anything worth talking about or noticing. It was
yeah,
just all right, going from point A to point B, and that's it.
yeah. That's fair. Um, let's talk about the like the I put the word theme here, but I feel like that's not right. Let's talk about like kind of the brand, the genre of horror that's at play here, because Resident Evil's traditionally more like literal horror, scientific horror. You know, it's about experiments gone wrong and what happens with those experiments. They become monsters, literal monsters. This taking place in like a collective subconscious, it's a lot more psychological, a lot more, it comes off a lot more supernatural because it's all in a collective mind. How did you
Yeah,
guys enjoy that? Because it's very out of character for Resident Evil. It's very experimental for Resident Evil.
I
I
liked
feel
it.
like I don't need it in Resident Evil. Like
Okay.
I feel like then we straddle the line of becoming just a different game.
Yeah, and again, we'll get to my hypothesis at the end with the final question. That plays into my hypothesis, but like, I agree with you, Delilah, that I don't want to see it for a mainline game. But as a DLC here, I mean, wasn't one of the DLCs for Seven like you just got a chainsaw and went berserk? Like, I can't quite remember.
I feel like
Um,
the DLCs for 7 were just very like arcadey,
You
like
yeah,
kind
might
of
that's what I'm
like the
saying. Like,
mercenaries mode, but a little different.
you might be thinking of a DLC for the Evil Within, Jason.
maybe
Because one of the DLCs for the Evil Within, you become the executioner guy in that game, and you go kind of run berserk.
I could have sworn that there was a DLC for Seven where you basically are like you play as the equivalent of like the dad character in that game with the
No,
chainsaw. I can't remember.
the closest thing in Seven to that, I would say, is the DLC or the like the additional level you get with one of the DLCs where um it's Jack's 55th birthday and you need to run around and kill enemies and get food and feed him, and like you can just
That might be what I'm thinking of.
you're
Yeah,
given like a huge arsenal of shit. You could just run around and go berserk and
yeah,
stuff.
that
It's
might be what
pretty
I'm
fun.
thinking of.
Yeah, because yeah, there's nothing like that in like nothing like exactly what you're describing is in the DLC for Seven.
But yeah, long story short, I agree with Delilah. Like, not for Resident Evil the main series, you would be fundamentally changing something. But for a DLC here, I'm much more open to it.
And the
Yeah,
thing is, I feel like the Resident Evil story already is going off the rails a little bit, and this is kind of like bringing it where it can go like too far away from the rail, and it's like, well, the metamycete, like it's canon, like it's a thing, like this psychological aspect of it, like it's in the mainline story. It's not like this is some like spin-off or whatever. So it just makes me worried for like how far they're gonna use this. And I'm okay with people like experimenting. If this was an experiment for them to figure out next steps, then fine. But if this is what it would be, then I don't really care for it.
yeah,
I don't think it was terrible. It just wasn't what I want out of the series.
yeah. I uh, I agree. I think we brought this up at the end of our village episode. I think I talked about this, and we're going to talk about it again. And I think it was pretty much the exact same question. Where does Resident Evil go from here? Where does it what does the next one look like? And I think I thought that it would be or I definitely thought it. I don't know if I said it. I'm pretty sure I did. I thought it would be an interesting change, an interesting dichotomy to play as someone with like someone that is mutated, someone that it does have powers. They kind of play with that a little bit in Resident Evil 6. In one of the campaigns, you actually can play as a character who does become mutated and has like, you know, Resident Evil monster powers in like the final level of that campaign. And it was pretty interesting. It was done pretty well. Um I thought a whole game could be interesting like that, and that's kind of what I thought the next Resident Evil was going to be. Or you play as Rose and she has powers. Now after this DLC, I don't really think so. And because the way that they handled this, and the experiment that they kind of ran with this to make it much more psychological. You're right that this works well with a DLC, but it would not work well with a mainline game, and I definitely don't want to see it
Yeah, and
with a
again,
mainline game.
finally, I've hinted at it multiple times. My hypothesis for how this DLC came to be. So, do you guys remember back in the day with Resident Evil 4 when they were after the fact they showed off a lot of what the early builds looked like? So one of them was like a haunted castle, and like there was a possessed suit of armor chasing Leon around, and there were like paintings that would change without you really seeing it. Like you would turn around a bit, stuff like
It
that,
seemed
and like
more much more paranormal
yeah,
almost.
it was much more paranormal. I mean, obviously there was another build of RE4 that eventually became Devil May Cry, so on and so forth. The point I'm making here is that they were playing around with a bunch of different ideas. I have a feeling with the end of RE8, Capcom was playing around with toying with the idea of potentially putting magic actually into a game, but they were unsure of it. And my hypothesis is that this DLC originated as like a testing build of what kind of gameplay RE9 might eventually have, and they decided, hey, let's just turn this into a full DLC and see how players react to it.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. It just if this is like a build, like a prototype build almost, and kind of a playing ground to just test the waters for what could be the next mainline game, there's not
I'm
enough
not saying
there.
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying
No,
that's my
right.
hypothesis of why
Yeah.
they did this.
I just hope that's not the case, because I just don't feel there's enough there that really shakes up the formula in a meaningful way. I think they could do better than that if they were going to do that. But also, I got to imagine the amount of contrivances they had to come up with to make this kind of thing work within the constraints of Resident Evil's universe. Like, I don't think they're going to try to bring that stuff to real life.
Yeah,
They have it contained to a consciousness. They have it contained to a much more magical setting almost, where that stuff could make sense. I don't think they're gonna aim to go further than that going forward. At least I really hope they don't.
Yeah.
And I hope that your hypothesis, I really hope it's wrong. um
well, the good thing about my hypothesis is that if enough people have reactions like you, then they won't do it.
yeah, but I don't I'm not confident that enough people are gonna have
I
reactions like
when I was saying my thoughts on this game, people were like, I liked it." And I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm weird." And now I'm talking to you guys and I'm like, "Okay. I'm not
No, we're
alone in like
I
feeling
feel
like
much
this
more
was like
normal.
yeah.
yeah."
Yeah. Um, I also put a note in here about the puzzles. I don't know if there were any puzzles that stood out to you guys. I thought the puzzle in the pool room, like, I thought I had it. I thought I understood the thing, and then when I actually figured out the solution, I was like, oh, well, I feel like this clue is really poorly written then.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that the drowning was supposed to happen last or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
Like they
because it
said
says, although I just drowned, which
right.
implies that was the last thing that happened.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I felt the same way and then I was like, "All right, I'm just going to switch them." And that's how I solved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked the presentation and the idea behind the puzzle, but in
Yeah.
execution they didn't properly word it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But again, I still thought it was a cool puzzle. I just thought it was poorly written. Um, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed the paintings thing.
Yes.
Um, I honestly thought that was gonna be a like a side thing that you didn't actually have to do. But pretty much every
Mm-hmm.
puzzle was a required puzzle to solve. I don't
Mhm.
think
Mm-hmm.
any of them were really optional.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I'm not
maybe I'm
counting
remembering.
something where you have to get rid of a bulb that gets rid of the way to a suitcase that gives you a weapon part. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
That's not
no.
puzzles to me.
The only thing I can think of, and again, this isn't really a puzzle. I guess technically you can not pick up the shotgun if you don't want to.
That's just using a key that you have to
Yeah,
get to
exactly.
progress
It's
the
not a
story.
puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't count that either. But you're right though. You could miss the shotgun theoretically. I just don't. I don't really count that as a puzzle because
Which you
it's
wouldn't
just
even miss it. You would have to like deliberately walk past it and or
yeah.
forget about it.
You have to go through that room. So
Was it really
there's
just those two puzzles in the DLC? Because I can't remember anything
I
else.
mean
If you want to count the doll stuff as
I'm calling
puzzles,
the
but
whole dollhouse a giant
Right.
yeah,
puzzle. Yeah. Other than that, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Which, like, for that short of a DLC, that's already a good amount. That's already as many puzzles as
That's
like
true.
Uncharted 2 had in it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, like the dollhouse is what made me have a good time with this. I
yeah,
I could I could take or leave the castle section, and the final fight. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I thought the final fight was kind of lame. It was visually interesting, but like gameplay wise, it was like meh.
it was it was just kind of tricky figuring out when you go to use your power to punch Miranda in the face, like
The
the
timing
distance that it, well,
and the
not even the timing,
distance.
but like the distance
Yeah.
got me every single time. I mean, I thought that big fungal branch would stretch pretty far, but I had to get pretty close every time I wanted to hit her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was also a timing thing because as soon as you absorb the ball, you had to execute it. So if she wasn't close enough when you absorbed it, then you had to wait until you absorbed another one. You couldn't just like, it's not like you kept the energy. At least that's not how I saw it. Like I
No,
felt
yeah.
like I couldn't like hold it and then wait till I was angled close to her and then do it. I had to like angle myself, then absorb the ball and then hit her, which was a little frustrating.
Mm.
And it was like okay, I've done that in like Zelda games, like hitting a ball back to someone. It didn't turn into a branch, but like it's just like I don't know.
Oh god, Ganondorf flashbacks and throwing lightning balls at you, and sometimes it will just go on forever because the game like doesn't know when to quit.
Yeah. So
But
yeah, it was whatever. I actually enjoyed the fight against the guy with the mallet a little bit more than that.
see
The
that fight was I feel like he was just a giant bullet sponge and just took like way too long to actually do anything effective. At least at the beginning, the first phase where you're fighting him is just like
yeah.
just takes a lot of punishment. And
Yeah, it definitely gets more interesting when it starts also becoming simultaneously an environmental puzzle where you got
yeah,
to unlock different areas to get cover from him. Yeah,
yeah, um, yeah. I mean, that yeah, that's about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I don't want to give this one a score. I'll just say, for me, the dollhouse portion was worth the time I spent with it,
Okay.
and the
Yeah,
other
I
stuff
mean,
was
I
okay.
would agree with you because that was easily some of the scariest shit I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game.
Yeah,
So,
and
but
I love stealth games. So a
mhm.
stealth mission in a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I do too. It was just I feel like it was a little clumsily put together at times, and it
Yeah,
got a little frustrating when and overly punishing when you did get caught.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the dollhouse was it did make the whole thing worth it. I totally agree with that. Can't argue with that. The last thing I do want to talk about the ending just a little bit more and just talk about like now that we've played this DLC and we've seen that last cutscene. I want to ask the question again: where do you guys think Resident Evil goes from here? What's the next game look like?
So I'm hearing rumblings, and this is from people, so it's completely anecdotal. Like, I don't know if this is actually confirmed by Capcom that this is the end of the winter story.
yes,
So I'm
I think that
assuming,
is
yeah,
definitely
okay.
confirmed. Yeah,
So then, I mean, that's a good thing, right? Because then maybe we don't have to see Rose again. Or unless we see her like. I like Rose. We didn't talk about
no,
that.
I
I
know.
actually like her character design and like her motivations or whatever, but like just like how she talks and she just seems like a cool kid, you know?
hmm
Um, I really like her design, but I don't really care to like play as her anymore after playing the
Yeah,
DLC. And so
I
if we
thought
see her again, that's fine, but like I just hope it's not a
this was
mess.
yeah, this kind of came off as like closure for that character and that family as a whole. Like
Yeah.
especially with the scene where she goes, but we didn't even talk about it. Where it's more of just an interactive storytelling scene where you go to the house um, where she grew up before Resident Evil 8 happens,
Yeah.
and you're looking at all her baby stuff and the dad letter and whatnot.
yeah, I
Yeah.
did put that in here, and I kind of forgot to bring it up.
It wasn't like I wasn't like aw, you know? I
Yeah,
Yeah,
was just like, okay.
more
Yeah, I
so
remember
it
this.
works.
when
It works better if you don't know that Michael is Ethan, but we did.
yeah,
So
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Through that whole section, Katie and I, because I played it and she watched me play through it, we were looking at like things in the house and like noticed that they have a ton of repeat refrigerator magnets. Like they just have the same picture on their fridge like 4 different times,
That's funny.
and we're just like, what? Why?
That's so
Why
funny.
do
I
you
didn't
have
notice that. That's really funny.
Yeah, it was something. Like they also have like multiple carrot like magnets that look like carrots, and I'm like, okay, that I could understand, but like
Yeah.
the same picture
Right.
like 4 different times on the fridge.
Yeah.
Why?
Like
Why?
you went to like Rite Aid and like printed it like 4 times. Like I want 4 copies of this.
I need to fill up my fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, but okay. I think the next Resident Evil game, the next mainline one, I think we're gonna be playing as Chris again.
Hmm.
See that I think more likely than not, you're right. I
Mm-hmm.
hope not though. I would I would prefer that Chris remain just a recurring side character.
Yeah, he's
And they
so powerful, dude. Like it's
yeah,
hard
because
to play as Chris.
at that
Yeah.
point it becomes like Call of Duty Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't disagree, but I don't the way they set up the story going forward is that let's also not forget that in during Village they find out that the BSAA, which Chris went rogue from and is no longer with, and neither like his Hound Wolf Squad. I hate that name, by the way. His Hound Wolf Squad is a rogue unit that separated itself from the
We're not
government,
just
from the
hounds. We're
BSAA.
not just wolves. We're hound
Hound
wolves.
Wolves.
Canine. Hey, maybe we'll play as Canine.
Maybe we'll play as yeah. Um, but they found out that the BSAA was actually using bioweapons.
And correct me if I'm wrong or I'm not remembering this properly. The BSAA is who you were working for in 5, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That it was who Chris was working for after no longer being at Stars.
Yeah.
Like he's been working for the BSAA. I think like Revelations establishes that they've been working for the BSAA most of the 2000s.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure that takes place around the time of 4, and Jill is in the BSAA at the time.
Yeah.
So I think I'm remembering that correctly. So yeah, like the BSAA, he'd been with for a long time, and now he left because there was a lot of bureaucratic shit going on, and they weren't aligning with their views. And now the BSAA, which keep in mind is a bioterrorism, like an anti-bioterrorism unit agency. They're actively fighting against bioterrorism. They're using bioweapons.
Well, do you think
Yeah.
that's a way for them to kind of cycle out Umbrella and set up kind of a new big bad? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they kind of already did set up a new big bad with that mysterious organization that Lucas was like working with in
Oh
7.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different angles they could take going forward, but the reason I suspect we'll be playing as Chris is because Chris is involved with all of them. You know,
Yeah.
his Hound Wolf Squad separated itself from the BSAA, and the BSAA, they find out at the end of Village, is using bioweapons, and the whole reason they were in Europe was kind of to investigate this mysterious organization that knew about Evelyn and was working with Lucas,
Yeah.
which could have just been Miranda, for all we know. I don't think we actually have much of a confirmation if it's separated from Miranda or not. I think it is like its own thing, and was
Yeah.
just kind of being supplied the Mutamycete by Miranda and the village.
Ultimately, I have a feeling that chances are you're right, and they'll end up just defaulting to Chris to get that fanfare when it's announced that you're
Yeah,
playing as Chris again. I would hope that they start a new saga with a new character, not like a completely new saga, but like continue that background subplot with the BSAA with a new character and have continue to have Chris as a recurring side character.
hell.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it. Bring Jake from 6 back. We haven't seen Jake Wesker since Resident Evil
I
6.
don't think they want that heat. They'll get heat for that.
Man, Jake was cool.
No, I mean it doesn't matter if he was cool. He probably was one of the better parts of that game. But
Yeah.
just mentioning Resident Evil 6 will set off so many heads.
I don't know. Maybe. I feel like 6 is it's still kind of the black sheep, but I feel like it's getting more and more apologists recently.
It
Hmm.
always happens.
Maybe one like I know I brought this up before, but maybe one day we should reach a point where we cover that game, talk
Yeah,
about it.
I haven't played 6 actually, and I've only played like half of 5.
Well,
So,
we
I'd be
know
down.
we know we'll be covering a certain earlier Resident Evil in the coming months.
Yes. I
Um,
can't wait. I'm so
yeah.
excited.
So we'll stay tuned for that. I'm sure listeners, I'm sure you can think of what game I'm talking about. But anyway, any other thoughts, things you guys want to bring up before we close this one out?
No, playing this DLC just makes me as a whole like Resident Evil 7 more than 8. And I think I already did, but
Yeah.
I, I think as in gameplay wise, I started to like Resident Evil 8 more as a whole because I did not like the ship section of 7. But
Mm-hmm.
now looking back on all of this, I'm like, yeah, 7 was where it's at.
Yeah, they definitely need to go back. What they were trying to do with 8 was play off the RE4 nostalgia, but they kind of forgot that the reason RE4 worked was because it had great encounter design,
Yeah.
which
Right.
RE8 does not. But yeah, I agree with you. Like 7 was better. They need to tap back into that magic.
Yeah, whatever that, yeah. Keep that sauce going.
Yeah,
Don't do the Resident Evil 8
that
sauce.
was some spicy sweet sauce. We need some of that spicy sweet sauce back.
All right. That all being said, Delilah, what are you doing? What are you working on?
Oh.
Anything you want to
uh
plug? Anything you don't want to plug?
just I'm still streaming on Twitch, but I'm gonna be announcing a lot of changes coming up, so that'll be like slowing down pretty much. So just a YouTube, Twitch, you'll
Okay.
figure out what I'm doing, I
Stay
guess.
tuned to Assassina_San
Yeah.
Yes.
on all platforms.
And watch her One Piece video, or short, I should say. It's very
Her
good.
One Piece short.
Thank you.
Where a single tear drops because she finally
Oh, you
caught up.
spoiled it. Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, damn it.
God damn it. We're not supposed to
This
spoil
is
things that we're
this
not
is
explicitly spoiling.
this is secretly a spoiler cast for Delilah's social media presence. Jason, are you working on it? Do you anything you want to plug?
Nah, I'm good.
Cool. I got nothing to plug. Wait, you didn't want to give a Kwasnicki rating on this one, right?
No, he
Yeah, that's
didn't.
what I said before. Like,
Okay, just want to confirm. Just want to make sure.
yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to leave you hanging, man. That's all. I want to
Now,
make
even
sure that
what would I rate it based on? What do they call them? Bunches or
bunch
slips of white?
sprigs,
What sprigs? Sprigs, yes,
sprigs of sage, white
yes.
sage. um,
Jesus.
if you liked this episode, if you're listening on YouTube, thank you. Be sure to like the episode, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, leave us a comment, tell us what you thought of this DLC, tell us who you think we're going to be playing as in the next Resident Evil title. I really wonder, since they with Resident Evil 7 and 8 they found a way to incorporate the Roman numerals into the word, how are
Mm-hmm.
they going to do that with 9
Right.
with an IX? What could the title possibly be?
Yeah.
Syaxis.
What
Actually, that doesn't make sense because it's AX. God damn it.
No, they could do Resident Evil 6 Axis and it's exclusive to the
6-axis. Yeah.
PS3.
Yeah. Exactly.
um anyway, back to fucking making sure you listen to us and stuff. Leave us a comment and share the show, share with your friends, on your social media channels, on your YouTubes, Facebooks, whatever. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, be sure to rate and review the show. 5 stars preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like about the show. And again, be sure to share the show with anyone that listens on that platform. And also the same thing for Spotify. Please rate the show and share with your Spotify buds. What have you. You can follow me on Twitter at Nibelheimian. You can follow Delilah on Twitter at Assassina_San. You can follow Jason on Twitter at SolidQuaz, but don't follow him because he forgets he has Twitter. Also, who knows how much longer you'll be able to follow us on Twitter as it quickly catches fire.
You guys paying your subscription fees to be verified?
Yeah, fuck that.
Ha.
Anyway,
How am I supposed
let's.
to know it's you?
Yeah. Okay. I know. So difficult. Jason, what's the next game that we're talking about? What's the next game we're doing covering?
God of War Ragnarok. That's going to be a fun episode. I'm
That is
looking
going to
forward to
be
it.
a really fun episode.
I'm
That
so
might be
excited.
one of our like episodes where we're constantly looking at the clock and panicking the entire
Yeah,
time
like
because it's like 3 hours 45 minutes later.
shit.
Yeah. And this
I don't know.
game's 10 hours longer than the last game, so woo!
If we can sum up Horizon Forbidden West in less than 3 hours, I'm sure we can sum up God of War Ragnarok in less
Well,
than
God of War actually has like interesting narrative all throughout, so
Thank you. High five. I'm high fiving Delilah right
Man.
now.
Yeah, so that's probably going to be a doozy. It's going to be fun though. We're all looking forward to it. If you haven't played God of War 2018 yet, we do have, I mean, first of all, go play it. It is a really good game. We did do an episode on that one as well. If you haven't listened to that episode, go check it out. It's like I don't know, it's from many episodes ago. We covered it a while ago, but I implore you, go listen if you enjoyed that game and want to catch up in time for Ragnarok.
And we also, I just listened to it recently. We did some pretty good educating on Greek. Oh my god, Norse
Greek
mythology as
mythology.
well.
Yeah, and you know, I'm probably gonna bring that with this upcoming episode too, because I plan to reread Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology ahead of Ragnarok, because I want to make sure I'm totally I have all the myths, the core myths fresh in my mind, because I have a feeling a lot of them are gonna play into this one. So,
Or you could
plug
just learn
that
to
book
read
too, I guess.
Norse
Go.
and read the Poetica. But
Wait, what?
you could just read the source material by learning Old Norse, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. Reading the Prose Edda, I feel like, is a lot more complicated than just reading Neil Gaiman's. I'm trying to give something accessible, something a little
Yes,
more
I know.
approachable, you know,
It's
rather
making a
than going and
joke.
reading the old proses. But yeah, God of War Ragnarok. Look forward to that one in the coming weeks. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.